Hello everyone, this is Sahan here with another video. I hope all of you are well and ready for the review that I have prepared for you today. Today we will be taking a look at The Bell Jar, written by Sylvia Plath. This book has been set in 1950s. This is the only novel that Sylvia Plath has ever wrote, and it tells a tale of Esther Greenwood, who is an aspiring poet already at the age of 17, and she has actually won a scholarship to a New York magazine, and as part of the pledge, the magazine takes those who have won the scholarship for a month trip to New York. But probably before I go any further, I should mention that the story is a bit on the darker side, and it dabbles around the issues of mental health and suicide. And if you are a person for whom these subjects are triggering, then I would advise you not to watch this. But other than that, let's get into it. So as I said, Esther Greenwood is this person who has recently moved to New York for the duration of a month, and this is the start of her problems. New York is where she is seeing the dissonance and the difference between social hierarchy between herself and other rich girls who have also been accepted the same scholarship as Esther has. And this is where she starts to compare and contrast her own life with theirs, and she starts to see gaps and see things that she has probably missed out on. She sees those girls just debauching and just drinking and socializing with men more than they probably should have, or maybe more than Esther thinks that they should have socialized with or done the things that they did during the course of the month. But New York is where she starts to diverge from her past and to start to create a fictionary path for herself under the alias name of Ellie to whoever that doesn't know her, like say at a club or something. But the real problem started in the last week of her stay in New York. So what happened was that Esther went along with Doreen to a party where predominantly male persons were present, and they were looking to have sexual intercourse with the girls. One of the boys takes a liking into Esther and takes her out. Esther at the beginning was indifferent to the person and was believing that if she didn't want to do something, then she wouldn't have to. But eventually, she finds herself at a situation where she is going to be sexually assaulted, and that really makes her think as to what did she do wrong to have deserved such attitude from another human being, namely the person who has attempted such a thing on her. But at this point, the story cuts back to when Esther moves back to Massachusetts, and there she is being found to have more struggling with her mental health, and she finds herself distancing from her friends and from the college application that she has originally planned to go to before she went for the month-long scholarship at the New York. And she finds herself really alienated from others. And this is where another interesting part happened for me. And I think that this hypothetical on my end is what the reality for Sylvia Plath was, because this is the first and only novel that Sylvia Plath has ever wrote. And in the book, there is a point at which Esther begins to write a novel and creates this character named Elaine, and projects her misfortunes and her thought processes as in the shell of Elaine. And I think that this is the same thing that Sylvia Plath did. So she created Esther Greenwood, the character, and projected her upbringing and her thought processes to Esther's side of things. And I think this is a good and fair representation as to her mindset in different life stages. During the course of the story, Esther attempts to take her own life on more than one occasion. But in one of those instances, she begins to contemplate the real world consequences if she actually goes through with it. And she begins to see that her problem is not a physical problem per se, and if she actually takes her own life, she is not solving anything for herself because her problem is more insidious and harder to get at. And to quote you in her own words, I'm gonna read you this passage from the book. So she goes like this. But when it came right down to it, the skin of my wrist looked so white and defenseless that I couldn't do it. It was as if what I wanted to kill wasn't in that skin or the thin blue pulse that jumped under my thumb, but somewhere else, deeper, more secret, and a whole lot harder to get at. After this instance, she sees a psychotherapist going who recommends to Esther to go under a shock treatment, and this is where she again realizes that the judgments that she had of mental health professionals um, was a wrong one, and that they don't care about her inner psyche and her inner feelings and thoughts, and that they all they think would solve Esther's and people like Esther's problems is by physical treatments such as shock treatments. And this was an awful thing that Esther had to go through because at the end of her first exposure to shock treatments, he wonders as to the reasons why and the wrongdoings that she did to the doctor and to the people around her, that she deserves such an awful treatment. And not one that would solve her problems, but one that is very meaningless in the grand scheme of things. The story is cut down to when Esther is actually hospitalized in an asylum because of crash she had gone through, and she has been admitted apparently by her mother to an asylum. And this is a really hard part for her because she begins to hate the whole medical system and hospitalization and the shock treatments and all that. And during the end of the book, during the end of the book, where she finds herself with the opportunity to become free and to go to college eventually after 2 years. She sees that she is not in a better place than she has felt 2 years ago and where it all started. And this is a very interesting part to me where it says that mental health had not any real world solution back in the 1950s, and this is a really dark story to read. But if you come down to the realization that hopefully right now we have more resources and more knowledge as to the reasons and the processes that lead a person, such as myself, I have struggled with depression actually not far back a year ago when I was applying to pharmacy schools. And I had great resources to seek help from, which I eventually did, and it helped me to realize that my problems are solvable and that everything is not as pointless as I had thought it to be. Just because my circumstances are bad ones, it doesn't mean that I cannot create my own good circumstances in the future. Just because you've been born into a state of misery doesn't mean that you're condemned to live through it for the rest of your life. You have the power to change it if you bypass certain things. But yeah, other than that, this is the bell jar for you. And I hope that you guys enjoy it if you eventually get down to reading it. And I hope that if you have came by this video through an assignment that you had to do on Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, you have enjoyed it, or if you have just watched it as a leisurely activity, I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I hope that I will see you in the next one. Bye.